What's a skill everyone should know? I agree with you. When we got our first apartment, I really didn't know much about cooking, or how to cook any meals besides a decent meatloaf, mac and cheese, and breakfast sandwiches. My girlfriend had to teach me a lot, but she was super patient, except for that one time I tried to open a can of Pillsbury biscuits with a can opener. This. Some girl on YouTube made a video about how her mom would tell her to make food for herself, but when it came to her brother, Mom was all "oh my baby, of course." I was unpleasantly unsurprised at the number of people in the comments agreeing. It feels like not teaching your children to sustain life just because sexism is setting them up for failure. This is not as daunting as it's often made out to be. All you have to do is watch money in and out of your accounts, and make sure that the money in is larger than the money out by about $100,000 per year. If you find that you're struggling to make that happen, consider asking your parents for another loan of $10 million or so. After investing that money in the first penny crypto you see on Coinbase, you can live off that investment's stable returns for the remainder of the year, and be sure to DCA, growing your portfolio capital at least 10%/year with external cash. If you want to diversify, you could consider purchasing a small fleet of yachts. Even if you live way inland, it's a little known fact that yachts can be stored in warehouses even in mid-South Dakota, where it will grow in value if well maintained, as though it were an asset class all its own. As a last tip, consider eating out exclusively at fast food restaurants using their dollar menu, and be sure to keep the coupons mailed to you every now and again. Those deals and bargains will allow your financial portfolio to triple in size, given enough time. It's a simple thing, but learning to sharpen a kitchen knife, preferably with some water stones. I'm a chef and often get asked about super expensive knife they should buy for their home, or some knife they saw with claims of it never dulling, that their current knives are garbage because they are dull. I've seen people try and toss great knives because they are dull and the stick thing that came with them isn't working anymore. I use great expensive knives because I use them all day long, but honestly, people would be happier with that cheap IKEA set if they could keep them sharp than the €1,000 Japanese hand-forged artisan knife after they use it on their glass cutting board and it dulls. For those wondering, glass cutting board is bad because the glass is harder than steel. When you cut on a wooden cutting board, the steel meets wood, and the harder steel deforms the wood, leaving the steel unharmed. When you cut on the glass cutting board, the steel meets the harder glass and the steel is the one that ends up deforming, aka dulling, leaving the glass unharmed. Same goes for marble or any other surface that is unharmed by the knife when cutting. It means that the surface is harder than steel. Learning how to be okay with being wrong. Some people just can't accept being wrong about something because they take it as an attack against their character or belief system. In fact, I would say that I have the most respect for people who can look introspectively and understand their faults and work towards improving themselves. In other words, accept being wrong about something and use it as an opportunity to learn, grow. No kidding, I work selling parts for semi-trucks and literally nobody knows how to work a computer. They spend all day selling parts from an outdated system maintained by some of the most incompetent developers I've ever seen, but still don't know some of the most basic shit. I have to constantly play IT for these people. How do I log in? Why no print? How email do? Just fucking shoot me. Yes, if you have access to the tools, the ingredients, and either the internet or a cookbook, there is truly no excuse to be unable to cook. Not a good cook? Sure, maybe, but in my experience, bad cooks either fall into two categories: people who choose not to learn from their mistakes, which is an unacceptable trait in adults in any situation, and people who are comfortable with their own bad, word cooking and are happy to eat it anyway. While this sometimes has weird outcomes, it's totally fine. If you and the people you're serving are okay with the food, there's no law that says you have to change to cater to someone else's tastes. Personal taste is arbitrary. You don't need your parents or a home ec teacher to handhold you through it. There isn't a point in time when it's too late. There's no law that says you have to cook specific things. I see how it can sometimes be intimidating. Some hobby chefs and employed chefs are real snobs. Someone will post I'm brand new to cooking. Any suggestions on simple recipes to try in a shared dorm kitchen on a budget? And people will start dropping recipes for a full roasted chicken with 30 different seasonings and 8 exotic side vegetables, and imply that anything less isn't really cooking. However, it's so alarming to me to run into people my own age, who've grown up with the same privileges I did, who insist they can't cook because they try twice a year and fuck up, and decide that's just an innate skill some people have and some people don't. Like sorry, Susan, but the fact that you boiled spaghetti for half an hour and that plus unseasoned canned tomatoes didn't taste good doesn't mean you were born without the cooking gene. It means you didn't read the directions. It means that next time you should try a different method, not that you should try that exact same thing then say see, I can't cook. So damn underrated. I realize there are many people, I am talking millions and millions of people in almost every country, that do not know how to swim. Swimming is only common in regions where fishing was an important trade for survival. Most coasts and along major rivers, and rich countries with public swimming pools. I grew up in Germany and learned to swim as a child, so it never really occurred to me it is not normal to know how to swim. Yeah, apparently it's not. People skills. Know to be smart. Handling interpersonal relationship is the most important of all. You can be the most productive but you can piss your boss off and mark the end to your promotion. You can be the smartest person, but if you don't know how to sell your ideas to others, you don't go anywhere. On the other hand, I've seen countless people who are neither but they are the successful ones because they know how to be tactful. Okay, schmooze your superiors. People often get mad about people talking their way into a position, but it's so important. People work with people, and respond to people. Your good idea doesn't mean shit if you present it in a way that means I don't see why it's good, and you piss me off, lose my attention. Additionally, people who are good with people can help other people because they're more likely to chat and exchange ideas. My old boss used to love to use me as the face of the team because people wanted to talk to me, so we were more in the loop and had more collaborative work. Cooking, cleaning, basic repair and maintenance, sewing your clothes, changing tires, etc. Emotional awareness. You don't have to be really good at them, but it's silly to live your independent life off canned food, freezer pizza, and cup noodles because learning how to make sausages and season mashed potatoes is somehow beyond you. To throw out clothes because they lost a button, to make it the sole work of your friends to maintain relationships. Damn it, I thought I'd be the first to recommend this, but it is a very useful skill. Especially if you are moving by yourself. It's super easy to learn just a few useful slip knots and other easy to tie, untie knots that'll be extremely important with moving delicate furniture. But also almost every outdoor type hobby needs some kind of knot tying knowledge, like camping, hiking, sailing, fishing, hunting, kite flying, etc. It's also helpful for just having a family in general. Kids' toys break and they often involve strings, ropes, so being able to fix a string break can be helpful. Just last week, my lawnmower pull cord broke, and I had to join the two pieces in order to pull the cord to start it up. Knowing how to do that allowed me to mow my lawn before the hoe said anything. How to hand sew. A few stitches you should know. Running stitch, up down, good for quickly or temporarily holding fabric together. Back stitch, up, back to the end of the last stitch, down, up approximately one stitch away. Repeat, more secure than a running stitch, good for more permanently holding fabric together. Running back stitch, running stitches with every few stitches being a back stitch, faster than all back stitches but more secure than all running stitches, less bulky than all back stitches. I usually do one back stitch for every 3 running stitches. Whip stitch, running stitches except over the edge of a fabric, joins 2 pieces of fabric together at a seam. Ladder stitch, running that run parallel to each other. That is one up-down stitch on one side, one up-down stitch on the other side. Then pull them together. Invisible closure, good for fixing holes and seams, popular in plushie making. How to properly sew on a button. Make a small leg stitch over where the button will go to provide strength. Sew up through the fabric, thread on the button and tack it on loosely with a series of up-downs through the holes, either crossways or parallels depending on your shirt. Then wrap the thread under the button and around the threads holding it to the shirt, then back down and tie off. You want buttons to have some slack so they have room for fabric underneath them when buttoned and they aren't under a lot of stress. Now you might ask, but why should I know how to hand sew when I can just get the sewing machine to do it for me? Well, 1. You won't always have a sewing machine. 2. If you only sew to repair items, why would you want to pay $300 to do it? 3. Sewing machines require maintenance, repair, etc. 4. Everything I have ever made on a sewing machine has required at least some level of hand finishing anyway. 5. Do you really want to haul out your machine just to fix a small hole? Really? Just figure out how to hand sew a few basic stitches and do them well. Hand sewing can be just as strong as machine stitching. My hand sewing is actually stronger. If I have to unpick a seam I sewed on a sewing machine, it takes a few minutes. If I have to unpick a seam I sewed by hand, then I have to turn on a TV show cause it's gonna be a while. A machine sews essentially 2 rows of running stitches, one from the top and one from the bottom, alternating placement. Hence why it's easier to rip them apart. In general, smaller stitches equals stronger seams, more points of redundancy. This is true for both hand and machine stitching. When hand stitching, you want a longer, thicker needle for thicker fabrics and a shorter, thinner needle for thinner fabrics. Try to match fiber content of thread to fiber content of fabric, cotton to cotton, poly to poly. Since poly threads are generally stronger than natural fibers and can shred the fabric around them during movement, if you don't have the thread type for what you're doing, fixing a silk blouse, then opt for a natural fiber. You're better off making your own emergency kit rather than buying one from the store because the thread and needles suck. 1 spool of white and 1 spool of black should be enough, and a handful of needles. Keep one needle threaded with the length of black and another with the length of white for quick repair. Don't cut your thread too long, keep it around the length of your wrist to your elbow. It's much better to tie off than have to try to untangle a knot. Yep, you can save a lot of tiny tears in clothing from becoming worse and therefore trashing a shirt or pants, which saves money and is environmentally friendly. You can eventually learn to adjust your own clothes and get a perfect fit that ready-to-wear clothing rarely gives you. You can also learn more specific things like how to sew pillows or quilts, and make truly one-of-a-kind decorations for your home and gifts for people that are also really unique and heartfelt, given the time that goes into it. Sewing is a great skill. How to read for comprehension. This is a necessary skill for a number of other skills, such as not being a dick at a grocery store, looking at you, no credit card sign ignorers, doing your own taxes. Unless you have a relatively complex life, your taxes in the US are filling out a form you can print for free and doing some basic arithmetic. Taxes should not cost you more than the price of a stamp to file. Doing research about a topic. Any topic. Being informed means doing research. Doing research means reading literature. Is anyone going to actually remember sign language after taking one class in high school and then never having to use it? I'm not saying we shouldn't teach it or provide classes for it, but it's hard to retain skills like that just like spoken languages. Sign language is also not universal, so that would make learning sign language even more niche. For example, every high school student had to take a year or 2 of ASL. Minding their own business. It's not a hint towards you. Society has grown into something where everyone believes they are entitled to meddle with other people's affairs and have an opinion about everything. Also, if they have an opinion about something, they believe they are entitled to shout it out everywhere. Sometimes it would be nice if people could just shut the F up and mind their own goddamn business. Basic cooking skills. How to cook pasta or even make simple pasta. It's quite easy and really cheap. How to cut things safely. How to sharpen a knife. How to make a basic bread or bready dough, like for pizza. And I'd also add to know how to cook certain cuts of meat. Also, how to pick kitchenware, including pots and pans. These aren't high-level skills. They are easy to learn. Most of them will either save you money, or even not cost any money. The pots and pans thing is important. My mom always bought pans that had a screwed-on handle. These wear out quickly and you have to keep retightening the screw. Same with pots. If it's stainless steel, it needs a thick bottom. If it's copper, if you have copper cookware, your bowler, it doesn't really. The meat thing is also quite important. Use tough cuts for stews, long roasts, smoking, etc. Use more tender cuts for quick searing, where they won't dry out and tense up. How to tell when someone is trying to manipulate you. There is a way that people phrase things that is designed to goad your thinking in a specific way. The one I see the most is when people ask questions like, why would they do X? Is it 'cause they hate America? And it's not really a question. It's just a way to make you draw a dot to the conclusion they give you. There are a million little tricks, but you see it all over media nowadays. How to perceive. We rarely open up our literal senses just to absorb information so that have a better understanding of the situation. Thing is, being able to do this allows us to do tasks without depending on just one sense, but other senses as well. This would especially be useful for people who work with their hands, as they aren't wholly dependent on their eyes when they're in a spot where their eyes aren't useful. Basic cooking. I totally understand that a lot of people just don't enjoy cooking. However, there are a lot of recipes that are so easy, save money, and genuinely taste better. Rice is one that's super easy and cheap. I find it important because it's one thing all humans need to exist. If you can at least be able to cook basic food for yourself, I think it's a great thing. Robert Heinlein quotation about human generalists. A human being should be able to change a diaper, plan an invasion, butcher a hog, Connecticut a ship, design a building, write a sonnet, balance accounts, build a wall, set a bone, comfort the dying, take orders, give orders, cooperate, act alone, solve equations, analyze a new problem, pitch manure, program a computer, cook a tasty meal, fight efficiently, die gallantly. Specialization is for insects. Cooking. Crazy how many people can't cook basic meals. It doesn't have to be crazy complex. Simple meals are incredible when done well. On a more meaningful level, listening skills. It's surprising how many people aren't good active listeners. Listening skills can, in theory, solve many problems interpersonally and help explore relationships on a more intimate and enriching level. Sewing, or even simpler, knowing how to use a needle and thread to fix your clothes. Button came loose, needle and thread. Seam coming undone, needle and thread. Hole in your favorite pair of socks, needle and thread. Instead of buying new stuff for basically no reason, you can just fix it, which helps with longevity of your clothes. How to swim. How to invest money. Many parents teach their kids these and set them up. Most parents do not, however. Their kids will pass this on to their own kids, who will pass this on to their own kids, and you end up with people standing around blaming everyone but their parents. Learn to swim, learn to invest, then teach your children. Break the cycle. Fishing. It's not too important to some people, but the other things I wanted were already said. This is also important though. It's a calming sport that anyone can do. It also teaches nature into city people, maybe make them care about the environment a bit more, seeing how everything is connected in an ecosystem, and also seeing how defenseless nature is against us. Also, it feeds families. How to use a computer well enough to quantify and model your current and future financial situation, and make decisions based on that. At least in a spreadsheet. I wanted to start cooking. I want to live in a world where the correct answer is cooking. Looking back, the meeting point of computers and finance is much more critical than whether I eat skillfully cooked meals or not, although I did learn how to cook fairly well.